A federal judge has ruled in favor of a preliminary injunction against Texas's tough sanctuary cities law. Now, Senate Bill 4, which is the law in question, essentially forces police officials to ask individuals that they suspect of being undocumented immigrants for their paperwork to prove that they are in the country legally. And it has a number of other elements that this federal judge deemed unconstitutional. Now, this doesn't mean that he's completely blocked it. It just means that there will be a stay or a preliminary injunction until this case bears out in court. So under the law, Texas could fine police and counties that don't honor federal requests to hold people jailed on non-immigration or non-immigration offenses longer for possible deportation. It also ensures that police chiefs and sheriffs could face removal from office and criminal charges for not complying with federal detainer requests. So I want to stop there for a second, because when we talk about sanctuary cities, the way that it's often discussed in the media is misleading. It makes it seem as though, oh, in sanctuary cities, local cops refuse to work with ICE officials or federal agents, but that's actually not the case. What ICE agents ask for is for certain municipalities to just detain people for an indefinite period of time until they can prove that that individual is in the country illegally. Now, that takes a considerable amount of resources. Our prison system and our jails are obviously, over full. And so certain cities have sued against that because they're like, we can't just detain people indefinitely. This doesn't make sense.
So there's actually several different components. Sanctuary city is not a real designation. So there's no definition of it in the federal government. And so some of the things that they do, I totally agree with in terms of sanctuary cities. Some I'm less sure about. So for example, they say, look, we're not going to pull people over like Sheriff Joe Arpaio did in Texas and ask them for their papers. One, it's not in our jurisdiction. If they're in the country illegally, that's a federal case, not a state or a local case. Second of all, we can't pull people over unless we have some sort of probable cause, and you look Latino is not probable cause. So if that's what you call a sanctuary city where they direct their cops not to be racist, great, I love it, I'm totally in favor of it. Now there are other parts of what they call a sanctuary city where sometimes ICE will say, okay, you arrested that guy on a different charge, but we have reason to believe that he's in the country illegally, hold him. Now that's where it gets to be a tougher issue, partly what Anna was referring to there, because, well, look, that's your jurisdiction, not my jurisdiction, and I don't want my taxpayers paying for it. And plus, one of the things that happens is if you turn the local cops into ICE officials, then the people in that area are more reluctant to talk to the cops and report crimes.
Exactly.
So it's actually the cops in those cities who say, no, we don't want to serve as a holding pen for ICE, because that's counterproductive to our interests as local police officers.
So to be honest with you, it's counterproductive for almost everyone's interest, with the exception of people who have absolutely no compassion for anyone, right? So what I mean by that is, they have reason to believe that that individual might be in the country illegally, right? And so they ask these cities and these cops to detain these people indefinitely until they get around to investigating the situation. It takes a long time to investigate the situation or get to that particular case. And what if that person is in the country legally? And in a lot of cases, that is what happens.
So if the federal government did this right, then we would have a lot less of an issue. So my proposal would be, hey, listen, if you think somebody's in the country illegally, and their sentence is up at a local level, go get them. Put them in a federal holding facility. And by the way, give them due process, which includes a speedy trial. So if you think that they have broken the law or they're here illegally, well then hurry up and handle that in a constitutional way. If you say, I'd just like to be able to hold somebody, whether they were positive or were not positive that they're in the country illegally, and I'd like to hold them for a long, long time, and I wouldn't like to pay for it, I want you to hold them and you to pay for it. Well, that makes no sense at all. So now when Texas passes a law saying, the cities are not allowed to do any of this, they must follow the orders of the federal government, even though that's not their jurisdiction. And if they don't, we're gonna put those cops in prison. Wait, I thought you guys were for cops.
No, it's amazing. So the cops could potentially face criminal charges if they refuse to comply under this law, right? And then the other part of it is, even if it's an elected official who refuses to comply with what federal officials want, that elected official could be taken out of office based on the wording of this law. And so the federal judge in this case, who decided to issue this preliminary injunction, was like, yeah, there's a lot of unconstitutional components here. And so as a result, I'm gonna go ahead and pause until this case bears out in court. So keep in mind, there were several cities within Texas that sued against this Senate bill. That included Houston, Austin, San Antonio, and Dallas. And Manny Fernandez from the New York Times writes that lawyers for those suing the state said prohibiting local officials from endorsing a particular viewpoint violates the First Amendment. Judge Garcia, the federal judge who ruled in this case, wrote that the plaintiffs were likely to succeed with that argument when the case goes to trial. So there is a First Amendment issue here as well, because the federal government is obviously attempting to take action against local government over a difference in political opinion.
Well, I know that the right wing is going to support the judge because they care deeply about freedom of speech. And so when one of their own wants to get paid a lot of money to speak on a college campus, that is a freedom of speech issue. When Nazis march in Charlottesville, that's a freedom of speech issue.
Right.
When local cops want to have their freedom of speech, no, we're against cops and we won't let them speak. That's right. That is the conservative position in Texas. And a federal judge has said, no, that's unconstitutional.
Exactly. In fact, I just want to read you his quote because I think the judge's quote is important and it gives you a sense of where he's coming from. So Judge Garcia writes, the government may disagree with certain viewpoints, but they cannot ban them just because they are inconsistent with the view that the government seeks to promote. Senate Bill 4 clearly targets and seeks to punish speakers based on their viewpoint on local immigration enforcement policy.
Damn. Well, I'm sure the right wing will turn around now and say blue lives matter, blue speech matters, and let's protect the local cops against this overreach by the state government.
Yeah, we'll see about that.
Looking forward to your agreement on this issue. If you like this video, you probably like independent media. The best way to support independent media, become a member of the Young Turks. TYTnetwork.com/join.